Hey, Wee Woo Katie, welcome, welcome. I get some music up. Feels like a very can be a very rough around the edges stream. Wasn't not a lot of production into this. Just wanted to I couldn't go live later today. And grab a pillow real quick. Help me help the posture. I couldn't go live later, so I wanted to go live now, and it's gonna be a shorter stream, probably like an hour or so, just to, I don't know, have a spot where we can talk, do whatever we want, be a safe space for people who, understandably, of course, election stuff is pretty frickin' doomer right now. It's it's something that was always a possibility. I think if you watched any coverage that was mainstream or independent, everything was pretty much saying it was going to be a toss-up at best, which it's one of those things where Donald Trump, the man, the myth, the legend, Donald John Trump, Donald J. Trump is one of the most unelectable people in any political history. And the Democrats have managed to lose to him twice and narrowly beat him once. I think a lot of us, understandably, this time around, were libbed up. We had a lot of hopium. And I think, Marta says lived in Delululand and tried to pretend like it wasn't a possibility. I think part of it, I guess it would be partially like Delulu land, but like it was a toss up. It was supposed to be at worst a toss up. And for it to be not even close, ultimately, in the end, is something I don't think a lot of people were expecting. But it was a result that like a lot of people were sounding alarm bells on. Are we sure there hasn't been fraud? Yeah, there's no. Vote election integrity in the United States is it's an extremely secure election. Anything with fraud is going to be copium or hopium on the liberal side. It's on Democratic side. Obviously, okay. Let me rephrase that, and so I can be very clear. Election, like gerrymandering, voter suppression methods, all of that stuff exist and do it and to inherently reduce voters, and much more often than not, reduce Democratic voters and how much power they have. Democratic Party voters. But those are all legal. So that's not voter fraud. Thank you, Cassandra. So I think the hopium of voter fraud being a thing where the Republicans didn't cheat to win any more than is allowed. It's just straight up the Democratic Party put together a very bad platform. One that ultimately fell short with mobilizing a vote. Yeah, I'm going to a Blackhawks game later because a friend of the show, Jake, has season tickets, and so I'm going to see the Detroit Red Wings play Chicago Blackhawks. So I couldn't stream later, but which my dumbass, he sent me a list of all the dates that I could join in, and I didn't even like, this was like a month ago, and I was like, oh, I'll pick one of the days like during the week. That way, like, I imagine all the other friends that he has that you sent it to like couldn't go during the week. So I was like, I'll pick one of the ones during the week. That way I'm not competing with like, a prime time Friday, Saturday night one. And I didn't even fucking think that I was going to this the day after the election, which is just whatever. How's Erica? I haven't talked super directly with Erica. We're all in a group chat, obviously. But I mean, I think we're all feeling that. I think we can all understand how we're all feeling right now, Erica included, which is just anger. Hopefully the anger is pointed in the right direction towards the Democratic Party and of course the conservative Republicans. Resentment, almost like an embarrassment. Or ads later. Yeah, I wish we could turn the ads off. I'm sorry. What's up, Tiggles? Live in the deep south, so I feel very alone in my disappointment despite knowing I'm not alone. Yeah, no, you're not alone. That's the important thing to remember is if we want hopium for the future, this is our hopium for the future. I can pull it up in a second here. 1 second. This is our hopium for the future. And there's like a pragmatic nihilistic way to talk about it. And then there's a more like positive spin on it. Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up here. The stream you caught. Yeah, well, what a bad one to catch, huh, Sharny? Oh my god. Oh my god, what is happening? What is Twitter doing? It's like constantly trying to log me in. I'm gonna get like locked out. What is going on? Please stop. Please stop. What is I just want to. Okay, I think I stopped it. I just want to see a tweet. I'm just trying to see. I want to show y'all what's happening right now. Flashing lights warning for a second. It's just like constantly refreshing and trying to like auto-sign me. What are we talking about? Just election doomerism. Okay, so Tank Bear, you said we fumbled the bag in PA. I think ultimately what I want to do, I don't think it's important or productive to blame voters. Like, I think we fully need to blame. I'm gonna pull up some stuff here on why we need to be our cause for hopium or copium. And I think this is something that you'll find true with a lot of progressive stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up. It's the wrong. Hang on. I'm using my leftist book club background here, so it's the only scene that I had ready, and I didn't feel like putting up some ready. So, okay. I think this is something that if we want to have hopium for the future. This was tweeted before. I mean, this was from 1041 last night, so before stuff was out. These are the states where abortion access was on the ballot. And it's comparing it to Kamala's portion of the popular vote. So abortion beat out Kamala in every single state. So Montana, abortion access beat out Kamala by almost 20 points, 14 points in Florida, 14 points in Maryland, 14 points in Arizona, obviously less in, South Dakota, Colorado, yada, yada. But I think if you want to be positive, what we need to focus on is that the progressive policies that I assume everybody in this chat and also myself hold are extremely popular policies when they aren't attached to a politician. Something that is part of the reason why so many people were calling for Joe Biden to drop out before. Let me see if I can pull it up here. One of the reasons why people were calling for Biden to drop out is because there was this thing that if you just took a generic Democrat and ran them against Trump, they performed very well in polls. Let's see here. Okay, so this is what I want to talk about here for real quick. So this was back in 2000. This is on NBC News. but this was back in 2023 of November. Okay. If you look at generic Democrat, which means Democratic, there's a D next to their name, but there's no history or any opinions put on the politician. Generic Democrat beats out Trump by over 6 points. This was back in November. So this is our copium. I think if you were to ask me, and I'm just a humble guy with my own lived experiences, I think there are three main things that you can point to as to why this election happened or the way it did. And I'll start at the beginning of Kamala Harris's campaign, which obviously she had 100 days to run her campaign. Part of that is because the Democratic Party fucked it up. There were people calling for Joe Biden to drop out much before he did. And then it kept getting pushed back, further back and further back. And people were calling for him to drop out because even in 2020, when Joe Biden himself ran, he said, I will be a transitionary one-term president because he knew he was too old. He said that in 2020. And then Biden, for whatever reason, we can speculate for whatever reason, but the reason is not important. He decided, no, I'm going to run again. And so when this poll dropped in November of 2023, and we see Biden at this point was doing horribly compared to Trump. At the worst, I believe it was after the debate, Biden was down 18 points on Trump. But generic Democrat polls better. And so if you take Biden out and put generic Democrat, aka Kamala Harris, somebody who was a relative unknown despite being the vice president of the country for at that point nearly 4 years, nobody really knew about Kamala Harris as in the general population. And when that happened, there was a huge surge, right? Everybody in here felt it. If you were following politics, or even if you only casually did. Hang on one second. I also was lived up, and I'll explain what I mean by generic Democrat in a second, Ragazam. I'll explain what I mean by a generic Democrat. But when she first came in, and when I say generic Democrat, it's not just me like dissing her or labeling her something that she's not. That is what polls showed, which was all of the failures of the Biden campaign were not being ascribed to Kamala Harris, which, I mean, should they have? She was the vice president. The vice president doesn't really have that much power at the end of the day, right? Whatever. But when I say generic Democrat, the electorate, the Democratic voting base said, oh, I have to scroll through all my crashing out tweets about the fucking Colts. When she was first appointed, the entire electorate just said, we won't blame you with anything that Biden has done that's bad. Just give us something. Be our blank slate that will listen to our people, to listen to our causes. And I'm going to go through this tweet thread because I think it kind of does encapsulate my feelings on the Harris Walz campaign. Because when she first was announced and then they announced Walz, I went into the fucking store and I donated to the campaign and I bought this hat. I was so lived up and I had so much copium. And so I said, I ordered a Harris Walz hat the day after he was announced as VP. And on October 22nd, I still did not have the hat. The election at that point was less than 2 weeks away. And I said, this is just something that kind of represents the mass ineptitude of the campaign since July. I was so lived up and ready to vote for Harris back then. There's an actual breath of fresh air and change, and most importantly, willingness for the Democratic Party to do something out of the ordinary to actually seem like they were trying to beat Trump by forcing Biden out. Now, this was also due to corporate backers saying you have to drop out because we're going to lose, but it was still listening to the base. I said I would have gladly worn that hat out on the podcast, Twitch streams, etc. But now all of their momentum has been lost as they cave to right-wing framing on nearly every issue, and my enthusiasm has been fully sapped. It's really sad to see the Democratic Party very clearly throwing out the progressive wing of their voting bloc, people pushing for ending a genocide, public health care, and taxing billionaires as they try to win over Republicans who stand directly opposed to their base's wants. Okay, so I tweeted that out on October 22nd. The next day, I got my hat in. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this was just a joke. There's a non-zero chance I saw my tweet and overnighted this. I knew I was getting it the next day. I got an email saying it was coming in. But this still, to me, sort of like shows the ineptitude of the campaign. And like, again, I understand she was on a shortened time frame because of the stuff, the circumstances. But those circumstances only existed because of the Democratic Party failing to identify Joseph Robinette Biden, the guy who can barely form a sentence, as a bad political candidate. And so what ended up happening was he dropped out. He was forced to drop out, just straight up. He did not want to drop out. Just straight up, he was forced to drop out by the Democratic Party. And then instead of having any sort of democratic process, they said, Kamala, it's your turn. And I get it. I don't think we should have had a primary starting in fucking July. I think that would have been disastrous. But you cannot argue that it was not a completely undemocratic move to just tap in Kamala Harris, which again, I was pro at the time, because you can't do anything else. You can't just like hold a primary going into the DNC. That would spell disaster. So she moves forward and they pick Walz. And Walz is a pretty progressive. He's done amazing things in Minnesota with their legislature, in the state with a very slim Democratic majority, becoming one of the most progressive safe havens in the Midwest, which it's the Midwest, right? Like they have policies now like to rival the most liberal states, the most left leaning states. That was awesome. And that's why I bought the hat. I was super on board because Kamala, as somebody pointed out earlier, as Ragazam pointed out earlier, she ran for president in 2020. And when she ran for president in 2020, she was pro Medicare for all. She was anti-fracking. She was she was left of Bernie or with Bernie on nearly every issue. You can pull up the voting records. She voted with Bernie Sanders something like 96% of the time while she was in the Senate for her one term that she was in the Senate. And then she became the presidential nominee, and there's like, well, she's not putting out policy page yet. And they kept going, and they got Walz, and it's like, holy shit, is she actually going to be a progressive candidate? And again, I say progressive not because I'm progressive and I want progressive policies. It's because they are popular. As I showed, let me see if I still had it up here. As I showed with this simple, obviously this is a one issue thing here. But Kamala Harris's biggest thing was reproductive rights, and she lost to the reproductive right vote within all of these states that were reproductive rights were on the ballot. So these are very progressive things, but they're being tied to people who are not liked. Okay, so now here comes the point to where, again, I'm a cis white guy. I think it's naive to say that sexism and racism, Kamala Harris being a black woman and an East Asian woman, it's naive to say they didn't hold they didn't like matter. They very clearly, the United States is a white supremacist country. Those things definitely matter. A pussy slaying, not the time. I think it's reductive to fully blame the reason why she lost on those things. Because I want to see if I can pull up some polls over time as her campaign has gone, because she was projected to beat Donald Trump for a while after she was tapped. And then the DNC happened. And when the DNC happened, a lot of liberals, a lot of Democratic safe havens online, a lot of people were trying to tell you that what happened to the DNC was to try to win over moderate voters. Ultimately, that didn't happen at all, obviously. I saw, like, in 2020, out of all Republican voters, 93% of Republican voters voted Republican. And in 2024, 93% of Republican voters voted Republican. And 5% of Republican voters voted Democrat for Joe Biden in 2020. And 4% voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. So them trying to court these right-wing votes it just doesn't exist. It's just not, it wasn't a strategy that worked out, as we can see. This is from The Economist, August 5th, 2024. We can see how bad Biden was doing. And this isn't, I'm not doing any victory laps because this is very, very sad. But the left was calling for Biden to drop out all the way back in May because we saw this. We saw Biden losing in polls. And we're like, guys, we can't fucking lose to Trump again. Eventually, Biden does the debate. He gets fucking slaughtered in the debate by Trump. Trump gets this huge bump. And then they tap in Harris. He drops out, and then there's that little gap, and then they tap in Harris. And she immediately jumped up. Because she offered something different. It's not that Republican voters were going to be like, well, now I want to vote for Harris. It was people on the left being energized. And why is that important? Because if we look at the popular vote of 2020, when Donald Trump last ran and lost, he got 74 million votes. And Joe Biden got 81 million. This might be too small. Joe Biden got 81 million votes in 2020, and Donald Trump got 74 million. If we look at our popular vote in 2024, obviously there's still a lot of votes to come in. Not a lot, but a decent amount. Trump is sitting at 72 million votes. In 2020, he had 74. So he's pretty much being right at that same. He didn't mobilize or gain new voters. He mobilized the same amount of voters. But Kamala Harris right now is sitting at 67 million. So we lost 13 million conservatively. Right now, maybe it'll end up around 12 million voters. So mobilizing your base was the pathway to winning. And this is something that people like leftists online were saying. Just regular Joe schmoes just saying we need to mobilize the left because you're not going to be able to pull Republicans away from Trump. Why would a Republican vote for Kamala Harris when Trump when she adopts conservative policy, when Trump already has the conservative policy? And again, I think it's naive to say that her being a black woman doesn't play a significant role here. But there are ways to overcome being a black woman, because almost the opposite is to imply like, well, you can never run anybody but a white man then, because a white man is the only one who can win. Obviously Obama dispels that, but black women are one of the most marginalized people in the United States. So these 14 million votes were lost. And where were they lost? If you throw a decent amount to her being a black woman, again, I agree. But I think it's also reductive to say that was the main reason. They actively threw away millions of votes by refusing to separate from Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. Straight up. Just straight up. And when you look at the states they needed to win, let me pull up. This is something, and this isn't people being, let me be clear, this is not people being single issue voters. Because she was also doing a lot of other really, really scary stuff with her her policy in terms of like domestically with the immigration policy. Michigan is one of the highest population of Arab and Muslim people in the United States. So if she just capitulated a little bit and just did lip service, that's the thing. Like all she'd do was lie a little better and just say, I will straight up be like, no, we're going to do an arms embargo. And then you can get in office and then you're not going to do it. We understand. You're a Democrat. You like corporate money just as much as everybody else. How do I get these I don't have ad blocker on my Hashan thing here. Let me put on ad blocker so I don't have this anime waifu staring at me while I'm ranting about this. I do have ad block. It says it's on. Okay, there we go. I have it on it. Nope. My ad block is just not working on this website. Whatever. I got the anime waifu out. Now we just get this shirt. So if you just look at Michigan, okay? And this was the plan all along. We had our swing states. Here, I'll tab out all of the swing states, the only states that mattered in this election. Right here. And we'll even include North Carolina if we're being frisky. These were our 8 swing states: Nevada, Arizona, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. These are the only states that matter because of the way the Electoral College works. And we know 100%. One just straight up, you lose. It was something like 6% of Democratic voters would be like, no, I'm not going to vote for somebody if they're going to give an arms embargo. But 37% of people were like, yeah, I would vote for somebody if Kamala Harris said that she was going to do an arms embargo. And then the rest, the remaining 50%, were like, I don't care, whatever. It's not an issue because domestic policy typically isn't a top issue for American voters. Okay, she wins Minnesota because she picked walls. Now we're going to flip Michigan because the Arab and Muslim vote doesn't go out and mainly just abstains, but also it's not even the Arab and Muslim vote. I want to take that back. It's just a general apathy by the voter base of people of her not giving what people want. And somehow she's with this same strategy, just by saying she wants to do an arms embargo, she gets Wisconsin. The other states don't matter. This blue wall, this was the strategy. This isn't me just making it up. The blue wall term that you heard all last night, if you were watching election coverage, it doesn't fucking matter if you lose these states because she has 270 electoral college votes. These 4 states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And the one thing that very heavily is favored in these things is an arms embargo. And it's not just the arms embargo, because again, Americans in large don't care about foreign policy, but it shows that you listen and it energizes people and it gives people something to vote for. And I think that's the biggest downfall of the Harris campaign. And it's the same thing that happened in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. It's the same thing that happened in 2020 with Joe Biden. The only reason why Joe Biden won in 2020 is because Donald Trump got fucking COVID a week before. If COVID didn't happen, the Dems would be screwed. And likewise, if Trump wasn't president, what would the Democrats be running on this cycle? They're running on restoring access to abortion rights, which is something that the Republicans took away in Trump's presidency, and election integrity via like January 6th, which is something that happened because Trump was president. What other policy that they ran on? It's all predicated on Trump, which is insane. And like, if you watched a Kamala Harris speech or campaign in the last 4 months that she's been the candidate, the nominee, they would ask her the same question effectively different ways, and every time it was the same canned response, which some would say is staying on message, but it shows a lack of like wanting to change or wanting to do better, which I think is what really demotivated people from wanting to go to the polls. On top of, and this is all on top of, the big thing is Americans are suffering right now. Americans are suffering a lot right now. And the one thing that Kamala Harris was campaigning on that pulled super well, other than abortion, because obviously Americans are suffering domestically because of unsafe or not having access to safe abortions. But the other thing was her saying she's going to do corporate price gouging caps, which is something that directly helps people. And they didn't even like message on that super great, but every time she brought it up, those were always some of the loudest cheers. But when that's the only thing you have, and of course, do I believe Donald Trump even has a policy or anything to fix anything? No, I don't. He's a fucking moron. He's a narcissist. But it doesn't matter what you have. It matters what people believe you have. And Donald Trump is a businessman, and he's a billionaire, allegedly. And people see that, and they see a white, successful guy, and people in America just think, oh, well, you have to be good at doing something to be successful, therefore I'll vote for Trump. The way to counter that isn't to say, look how bad Trump is, which is what the Dems have been doing for the past 8 years. The way to counter that is to offer something. Offer anything. And when they did offer things such as, and I say restoring abortion rights, her commitment on her website to restore abortion rights was so soft. But when she offered restoring abortion rights, restoring Roe v. Wade, and she offers corporate price gouge limitations, people were happy about those things. But when it came to any other issue, when it came to the border policy, and Anderson Cooper 2 weeks ago was straight up just like, but the border wall is racist, right? Like, you said the border wall is racist. And then Kamala Harris's response was like, well, I won't turn down a bad idea. We need a border wall. And it's like, what are we doing? You're just running on Trump shit. You're running on Trump shit and then saying, but Trump is really bad, guys. It's like, so ultimately, at full transparency, I did not vote for Kamala Harris. You can check in the Judges Discord. You can check my my chat logs in the current events section. I have been completely consistent on this. I have been telling people, if you live in a swing state, to vote Kamala Harris. At the time, it was Joe Biden. I think you have to vote. Unfortunately, I'm not a very big proponent of voting lesser evil. But I also don't shame people for not voting for Kamala Harris. I get it. But I live in Illinois. Okay? I voted down ticket blue except for Kamala Harris, because I just wanted if people say voting is power, I just wanted my one vote to say I support a more progressive Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris has not been that. And regardless, my vote does not matter because Chicago exists, right? So, full transparency, I did not. I didn't vote for Jill Stein. I wrote in Claudia de la Cruz. So, if you want to yell at me for that, that's fine. I disagree with your assessment because I live in Illinois. But also, if you live in a swing state and you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, and it's because she's been signing off on a genocide, or she's been signing off on also deporting millions of people from the United States, I don't blame you. I don't blame you, because that's what the Kamala Harris campaign was giving us, was promises to do Republican shit. And somebody pointed out earlier, one of the big things too was she courted so hard to try to gain conservative vote, running with the Cheneys and applauding the Cheneys, and hacking right made no sense ever. It never made any sense. It's this mythical conservative voter who like they just don't exist. They've never existed. That you're gonna be able to convert enough conservative voters to go blue. It makes no sense. So I think, yeah, courting Cheney when was it Oprah? Was the interview with Oprah when they asked her, or maybe it was Anderson Cooper. I can't remember if it was the Oprah interview or the Anderson Cooper town hall. They asked her what is functionally going to be different between you and Joe Biden's presidency, and she said nothing except maybe I'll have a Republican in the cabinet. I don't know who that's for. I don't know who that's for, because Republicans want to take away abortion access. Republicans want to keep minimum wage low. Republicans want to have a hellhole of a country. And when our top Democrat, Kamala Harris, who is running for president, is now saying, I think Republicans have some good ideas. Name a good idea. I'm sorry. Name a fucking good idea that Republicans have. I'm waiting. I'm fucking waiting. I fucking guarantee you there's not a single good one. They're all dog shit. Every single one is bad for American people and good for billionaires. And I wish when, and I understand why Anderson Cooper can't, because he works for CNN and, you know, they're obviously trying to get a Democratic candidate elected. I wish when they were talking to Kamala Harris and she said like, well, there are good Republican ideas, ask her to name one. And I know she would default back to that border bill, but anything other than the border bill, because the border bill is objectively wrong. It's based on lies. It's based on racism. I just want you to name one. Name fucking one. And I promise you cannot. I promise you cannot name a single Republican policy that is good. And you can probably name very few Democratic Party policies that are good too, because that party is also obviously just an extension of the right at this point. Yes. Give it up for girls says Kamala does not care about the American people. The DNC does not care about us. We got to care about us. Maybe this is me being a bit parasocial or giving Kamala some credit. I genuinely think Kamala Harris is just straight up a blank slate. I think she was just going to straight up do whatever the Democratic Party was kind of like leading her to do. And while and maybe again, this is me being parasocial and giving her too much credit. It's just I blame more on the Democratic Party than Kamala Harris. That being said, I do not ever need to see Kamala Harris run for office in any regard ever again. I think that's the one thing like that should happen. It won't, but the Democratic Party should fucking clean house top to bottom and understand that what they've been doing for the past pretty much since 2012, Obama like barely won in 2012, has not been working. Would you have preferred Sanders on the blue ticket? Of course. I mean, and Bernie Sanders, I think my general belief, and again, this comes from somebody who's always been a straight white male, is idolizing or sticking on to one person is generally pretty harmful because people are imperfect. That doesn't mean I don't think you can look at historical figures and understand and appreciate what has been done. And Bernie Sanders has been not great, or at least not up to like a good standard in a lot of in issues like Israel, Gaza. But genuinely, if you need a reminder and you hear me talk and you're like, no, Bernie Sanders is he's a millionaire, he doesn't actually care, go back and watch the Biden Sanders debate in 2020. It's genuinely baffling to me, at least, how you can have Joseph Robinette Biden, somebody who's been in politics since the 80s. Would he become a senator in the 80s, I believe? Get up there and start spouting shit for the first time in 2020 that Bernie Sanders has been pushing for, if not more to the left on, since the 80s as well. It's like Biden, I think this is a clip that I've used multiple times to make a point across YouTube videos that I've done. But I think this is something that I think younger people maybe don't fully remember or weren't, obviously maybe they were too young, but I think this is a very important clip that I want to show here on why the entire point of running Joe Biden was fucking insane. So this is from the 2008 vice presidential debates. So it's Joe Biden. Let me turn off this music. Joe Biden versus Sarah Palin, and it's about gay marriage.
They do in Alaska, granting same-sex benefits to couples.
Absolutely. Do I support granting same-sex benefits? Absolutely, positively. Look, in an Obama-Biden administration, there will be absolutely no distinction from a constitutional standpoint or a legal standpoint between a same-sex and a heterosexual couple. The fact of the matter is that under the Constitution, we should be granted, same-sex couples should be able to have visitation rights in the hospitals, joint ownership of property, life insurance policies, et cetera. That's only fair. It's what the Constitution calls for. And so we do support making sure that committed couples in the same-sex marriage are guaranteed the same constitutional benefits as it relates to their property rights, their rights of visitation, their rights of insurance, their rights of ownership, as heterosexual couples do.
Governor, would you support expanding that beyond Alaska to the rest of the
towards redefining to adults in
That's not quite where I needed it to be at. I think we want to be here.
Do you support gay marriage?
No, Barack Obama nor I support redefining from a civil side what constitutes marriage. We do not support that.
So he goes on that whole ramble about how, yeah, I support the idea of gay marriage, but you can't call it marriage, right? This is in 2008. Gay marriage was not legalized federally in the United States until 2015, obviously under the Obama-Biden administration. This was 2008. And now for comparison's sake, this here is a young Bernie Sanders in 1986. It's a fucking Reddit, so it's not going to zoom in great. At the Vermont lesbian and gay pride speech shit. Like it's not even an option in terms of like who has a better long-term record. And now, again, Bernie Sanders is far from perfect. And if he was the president, guess what? He would be a fucking war criminal unless he went in and just straight up like withdrew all 180 or whatever our fucking military bases and stopped every single war we were in. But I think one of the things that's really frustrating is I think first of all, Give Up for Girls, we should be scared that rights are being taken away. All of this frustration that I feel and people on the left feel is coming from a point of it's because we fucking let Donald Trump win again. It's not because we're trying to be hoity-toity like, oh, Kamala Harris was going to take your rights away. No, I don't think Kamala Harris was going to take people's rights away, but she wasn't going to fucking do anything to stop it. And as proof of that, we'll look at the Kamala Harris website. Okay. Let's look at her issues. Okay. This is on abortion. This is her big one. This is the main reason people cited for wanting to vote for Kamala Harris was abortion access. Okay, thank you. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, Harris has driven the administration's strategy to defend reproductive freedom and safeguard the privacy of patients and providers. As Governor Tim Walz has led Minnesota to become the first state to pass law protecting women's right to choose. Those are great things. As president, this is her promise. This is her campaign promise. Oh my God, please Google. As president, she will never allow a national abortion ban to become law. And when Congress passes a bill, she will sign it. And as somebody pointed out, we don't have the House or the Senate. And I hate to tell you this. I looked at the seats up for election in like May. I remember working out with Christian in like May and pulling it up and being like, we're fucked regardless, because just the way that the houses that were, or the seats that were up in the Senate and the House, we were going to be fucked. So how the fuck are we going to get, she's waiting on Congress. Her plan was to wait. Her plan was to wait. So when the Republicans hold House and Senate and they never pass through a fucking abortion bill recodifying Roe v. Wade, and then she's running again in 2028, this is if she won in 2024, it's the same fucking story. It's we have to run and codify Roe v. Wade, guys. This time for real. I don't think it's parasocial. You have to sell your soul to run for the DNC. If there's one thing they're for, it's doing anything to skirt the issue that capitalism, classism, racism, and discrimination are inextricably linked, that enacting policies in favor of equity will lessen people's dependency and then bolster them to organize. Yeah, but I think me calling like that I have like hope or whatever for Kamala Harris or whatever, I call it parasocial because that's almost removing her agency. She's a grown ass. She is 60 years old. She's a full ass woman. And if by me it's almost like an infantilization when I say parasocialism. By me saying like, well, Kamala Harris didn't have a choice. She had to keep her campaign promise to bomb the fuck out of Gaza. And she's a whole ass person. Like, she could have made that decision. And guess what? If Kamala Harris went on a radical left platform and said we were going to do an arms embargo, we're going to run on codifying Roe v. Wade through executive means, by using whatever fucking means we can as a president to do that. We're going to expand the Supreme Court. We're going to enact Supreme Court limits. We're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to do a single payer healthcare, which I, of course, think we should just do Medicare for all. But these are all, everything I just named, why they might seem radical left, are all extraordinarily popular policies. Like 60 to 70% of Americans routinely vote for a $15 minimum wage. They routinely vote for for abortion access. They routinely vote for a revised medical plan because everybody gets hurt by these things. And so if she would have ran on all of those things and then lost to Trump, then I guess you could be like, ha, see. But the issue is she wouldn't have lost. She would have fucking won straight up, because she's promising something other than I'm not Trump. And I naively, back in June, before Biden had even dropped out, while I did want Biden to drop out, that way we could pick somebody who isn't fucking terrible. At this point, Biden terrible. Actually, hang on one second. I just got some really bad news. Hang on one second. Okay, we should be all right. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Dems also do take rights away, like slower, like they'll build cages. Yes. I think that's a very poignant point. Give it up for girls. Yeah. I think this is where a lot of people's on the left's frustration comes from, which is, I was saying about if Kamala Harris, let me finish this point. If Kamala Harris ran all these extremely popular things, and again, it's not just to like, haha, then I, Josh Highsmith, want these things. These are things that also help people. Okay. When I talk about, like, think about the shit that Biden ran on in 2020, ending student debt, forgiving student debt, because and I don't know if any of your Dropout fans or Total Forgiveness fans. It's a wonderful, wonderful series on Dropout.tv called Total Forgiveness, about college loans and how crippling they can be. But right now, well, I guess in August 16th, $1.74 trillion of student loan debt were owed. Let's see what the average is. The average per person is $40,000. The median is a little bit lower, $23,000 for a bachelor's. This is tens of thousands of dollars, totaling up to trillions of dollars in student loan debt. Let's look at this little graph here. And there's no end in sight. This is something that Biden ran on in 2020. And people were activated. People were fucking activated to go and vote for something. Something else he voted for, or that he campaigned on, was the kids in cages. Do you remember in 2020? Donald Trump had kids in cages. Don't ask where the cages came from, because the cages were built under the Obama administration. But Donald Trump was using the cages to separate children from families that were trying to migrate to the United States legally, seeking asylum. Kids were being stripped away from their family. The parents were being deported, and the kids were being detained. Women were being forcibly sterilized at our border. They still are. Mind you, forced sterilization is something that has a rich history in women of color in the United States. If you want to, the black population, the native and indigenous people's population have been ravaged by forced sterilizations in the United States up until the 80s, was when some of the programs were still into the 1980s, were still into effect. And of course, at the border, people were doing forced sterilizations in 2020. The Democrats ran on that and said, look at how fucking evil Donald Trump is, which he is. Have a good one, Blake. And now, what is their position on the border? Let's see what their position on, let's see what Kamala Harris's position on the border was. Look at this fucking border. Everyone should have the freedom to live in safe communities. That's why Vice President Harris is fighting to keep our communities safe from gun violence and crime, secure our borders and fix our broken immigration system, tackle the opioid and fentanyl crisis, and ensure no one is above the law, including the president. Let's see here. As Attorney General, she went after international drug gangs, human traffickers, and cartels across the U.S.-Mexico border. She supported as vice president, she supported the bipartisan border security bill, the strongest reform in decades. The legislation would have deployed more technology to intercept fentanyl and other drugs, and added 1,500 border security agents to protect our border. Donald Trump killed this border, and now border crossings are at the lowest level in 4 years. So then why do we need the new fucking bill? You wrote it. You said, without this bill was killed. Remember, she says Donald Trump killed this border deal. Border crossings are at the lowest level in 4 years. Why do we need the border bill? What is it going to do? Like, what are we doing? Their administration is seizing record amounts of fentanyl, which is good. This might read as bad if, you don't think about it for 10 seconds. But if you're seizing record amounts of fentanyl, that means there is less fentanyl crossing the border because you're seizing it. And now it's already framing in a right-wing sentiment, because I want to show you this number. Because all of this is framed on a right-wing framing that is completely false. Okay, this is from September 20th, 2024. Most fentanyl is being trafficked by American citizens, not migrants. Huh? Data from the United States Sentencing Commission shows that 86% of those sentenced for trafficking fentanyl were U.S. citizens. Among non-citizens, the data includes those lawfully present and undocumented. Fentanyl traffickers were 34 years old on average, mostly men, and about 4 in 10. This was their first offense. 65,000 people in January 2024 were serving a sentence in federal prison for drug trafficking, mostly U.S. citizens. Okay? It's a fucking made-up issue that the Republicans just made up to be racist against migrants. And the Democrats, instead of just pointing to the data from the United States Sentencing Commission, and where is this source at? This is from the United States. The United States Sentencing Commission. This is the data, straight up. And instead of the Democrats pointing at the data and saying, you guys are being racist and just creating something that doesn't exist, they go, oh, well, we got to adopt that border bill, which they admit does not fucking matter. We have lowest in 4 fucking years, and we're seizing more fentanyl than ever. So again, my point being, if anybody tries to tell you that going left would have hurt her, I wholeheartedly disagree. There are some really, really great thinkers, much greater thinkers than I, that I'll share with you right now. The main one I really, really enjoy. If you've never heard of him, FD Signifier is great. This was his kind of like immediate gut reaction, unscripted reaction to last night and the polls. This is about an hour long, but he kind of goes over his thoughts on everything, and he goes over more from a black perspective of why he thinks Kamala lost. And another great person, I think she privated her Twitter, but Olay on Twitter. They'll speak more to the like white supremacist angle of the United States. But I think the big thing is Kamala didn't run on policy. And a lot of people that I'm seeing online, granted, this is all online, when you bring that up, is that they say, well, she only had 100 days. But I think people fail to recognize that the Democratic Party didn't have 100 days. The Democratic Party is always operating. And when people online, like myself, or other just content creators, people who don't do this for a living, we're just paying attention, can identify something and point to it and be like, why are they saying that? That's wrong. Or, like the polling suggests this. Why are they running away from that thing that would objectively help people and help their campaign? That's not because, well, Kamala just didn't see it because they only had 100 days. The Democratic Party is well aware of these things. They are choosing to side with the Republican Party on these policies. They are actively choosing to. And I think any other belief is just naive at this point. Because like I've shown, like where the hell did I put Kamala Harris's policy page? All of these issues, if you read it, this is her new way forward, which none of these have like actual policy, but whatever, I get it. Like I will give them some leniency in that they only had 100 days. But look, this is her policies. Trump, every single here. I'm going to open up everything. I'm going to open up all of these, and we're just going to see how many fucking times they mention Trump in this page here. Website's not super responsive. 29 times. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, what? Every single fucking paragraph. Look at this. I mean, this is his Project 2025 agenda. Every single paragraph is just Trump, 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 Trump. And it's like, what are we doing? Yes, nobody who is a prospective Democratic voter is like, I don't know, Trump or Harris. Those people are, if they genuinely are like Trump or Harris, they're either like 17 and have never watched anything ever, which obviously you need to. I don't think showing your enemies positions are necessarily the win that you think it is. The Electoral College only exists because of racism. The fuel of our country is literally white supremacy. Absolutely. Unfortunately, this time around, because Kamala Harris got so beat, the Electoral College argument isn't even one that we can hang our hat on. She's getting beat in the popular vote, which this hasn't happened. A Republican hasn't happened. A Republican winning the popular vote hasn't happened since 2004, when George Bush in his second term did it. And before that, it was George Bush Sr. in 1988. The issue here, again, you can tack in, and I will not disagree that racism and sexism has a part in this. But in my opinion, a much bigger part of this is the Democratic Party failing to offer things. The Democratic Party used to be the party of the middle class. That's why this blue fucking belt exists. This blue wall. You know what used to be in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and there still is to some degree? Middle class factory jobs, production, manufacturing. Of course, Michigan and Detroit is infamous for this. Gary, Indiana is also infamous for this. In Pennsylvania, you have fracking. These are all jobs that suck, and they like kill you over time. And over time, and as people were like, hey, these jobs are killing us, we're making we're making Henry Ford all of this money, and we're all dying on the fucking assembly line. Can we maybe get some, I don't know, health and safety laws? And the American government, instead of saying, yes, we understand, we'll protect you, they shipped all of our jobs overseas to make a couple more pennies. They just said, no, we're not going to do that. And the company said, fine, we're going to go to oversee production, manufacturing. Leaving the people in Minnesota, the people in Wisconsin, the people in Illinois who don't live in Chicago, the people in Michigan who don't, the people in Pennsylvania. That's why these are going red. And obviously Illinois is blue and Minnesota is blue. That's why these go red, because the Democratic Party has failed them. They aren't offering them anything. And to blame it on anything else is just either ignorance or maliciousness. You can't change my mind on that. They risk losing. That's why the Dems aren't doing anything, because if they do, they risk losing the power that comes from whiteness. Yeah. I mean, the Electoral College. So my point was, normally, like if we look at 2016, you can point to it, right? It's the Electoral College is inherently undemocratic 9 times out of 10. Why did it not just pop up? 9 times out of 10, it's inherently undemocratic because Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes, or 2.8 million more votes than Donald Trump did in 2016. So 2.6 million people, 2.8 million people just didn't matter. There's an ad. I'll wait for a second for ads on this. I'll read some chat right now. There's 3 ads. No, I wish I could turn off ads. I'm sorry. The ads are so annoying. I guess I could have streamed on YouTube. I literally sat down and just went live. I didn't even do any. I could have put it on YouTube. I didn't want to change my live stream targets to everything. It's kind of annoying. I probably shouldn't just fucking scroll Twitter while I'm just live streaming. Let me know when we're back from the ads, folks. If you do have a Twitch Prime, you can, if you have Amazon Prime, you can connect it to your Twitch account and subscribe, and then you'll get ad-free viewing here, or you can use it on any Twitch streamer. And it costs you nothing. If you have Amazon Prime, you can just straight up link it to your Twitch account. Okay, we're good. Okay. So my point being that the Electoral College is undemocratic 9 times out of 10 that it matters, because if straight up 1 vote equals 1 vote, Hillary Clinton would have won in 2016. but Bush would have lost in 2000. But it's not how it works. We have to live with the systems that we exist in. Part of the reason why Hillary Clinton lost is because she failed to capture the blue wall. And that's going to be the exact same thing with Kamala Harris. I mean, look at how similar. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even have the screen up. Look at how similar these election maps are. On the left is the Kamala Harris map. Oops. Open image in new tab, please. Thank you. Look at how similar these maps are. It's shaping up to be exactly the same, actually, right? I don't see a single state that's different. Obviously, like, numbers got shifted around. Like, Pennsylvania this year was only worth 19. When Hillary ran, it was 20. But this isn't because inherently voters are sexist. And I know that's what a lot of the takeaway is going to end up being. It's voters are sexist, so you need to overcome that by offering them something. Hillary Clinton was a uniquely unlikable person. I do think she still would have won had the October surprise of Comey and everything. But I think to blame it on just them being women is it almost falls back into the infantilization thing, because it's like, so like, what's the answer? Like, we can never run a woman? There are women in there are women who are voted in smaller offices, like all over the country. And I think my main point with this is, like, obviously Democrats can and often are racist, sexist. But I think if somebody is straight up not going to vote for you because you're a woman or because you're black, they weren't going to vote Democrat anyway. Those are Republican votes, like 9 times out of 10. If they're straight up like, I'm not voting for a woman, they weren't going to vote for you regardless of your shit. But I don't know. I think, obviously, again, I'm not denying that it plays a part. It certainly plays a part. There's a reason why people look at Donald Trump and think, well, he's strong and a businessman. And they look at Kamala Harris and they're like, I don't think she can run the country. That's obviously a huge, a non-zero component. But if policies matter, either Clinton or Harris should have won. What policies? What policies? Name me a Harris policy that straight up is a policy that's popular. She has 2. And they're like, people made fun of Trump for saying, I have the concepts of a plan. Again, we went over her page. I keep closing it. We went over the Kamala Harris page. What policies? Like, and yes, and I'm trying to stay away from the Donald Trump is a failed businessman stuff, because we all know that. We all know that. We all understand that. But if you look at Kamala Harris's page, she kind of just doesn't say anything. Strengthen and bring down the cost of healthcare. She talks about making the Biden-Harris tax credit enhancements that are lower healthcare premiums by an average about $800 a year. Extending the $35 cap on insulin and $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket spending for seniors to all Americans. Her tie-breaking vote with the Inflation Reduction Act gave Medicare... Like, this is all walking backwards from her previous position. Trump wears makeups and diapers, but he won. Yeah, I think you're... Like, we can make fun of Donald Trump, and I'm fine with that. My point is not to, like... We all understand Donald Trump sucks. Like, nobody in this stream is going to come in and be like, actually, Donald Trump is kind of awesome. But my point is more to point to, it's not like, I think there's I'm going to pull up the tweet earlier that I had sent in the Discord, because I think it's a very good tweet. And I think it's something that a lot of liberals and just people with reactionary tendencies, which America is a very reactionary country as a whole. This is just a random guy. He's not a politician or a journalist, I don't think. The leftist position is that people's positions, even if horrific, have roots in their material reality. The liberal position, as best I can tell, is that 20 to 30% of the country has an irredeemably evil soul. I guess I'm going with the one you could actually do something about. The last sentence is nothing. But I think this is very important to understand, because, okay, I'm going to assume, I'm not saying he's awesome. I'm not saying he's awesome at all. When did I say that? I'm saying he sucks. But let's think about it this way, okay? I'm going to assume people in here are generally pro a free Palestine. Okay. Hang on. Let me cook for a second. But straight up, I'm going to assume people in here are generally pro a free Palestine. I'm going to assume people in here don't want a genocide. When Republicans, hang on, no. Again, I don't blame people for being like this. This is an insane day in our history. This is the second time in 8 years that we've lost to the most, I opened up this stream by saying, this is the second time in 8 years we've lost to the most unelectable person in history. But I'm trying to explain why he was elected twice. So, we are generally for a free Palestine. If we don't need to get into the specifics, but the conservative and often sometimes liberal counter to that is, and I've had people comment this. I didn't mean to say he was awesome. I'm sorry. I've got two flags here. I have a pride flag, okay? I have a Palestinian flag. I had these up and people would comment, how can you support LGBTQ rights in Palestine and Gaza? They throw gay people off the roof, okay? This is a very common thing that you'll see. And liberals will do this. Democrats will say this of like, it is kind of weird that you're supporting these Muslims who want to kill all gay people. So let me cook for a second. I don't believe that anybody should be bombed to death ever. I just think that bombing an entire population is bad, regardless of if they hold archaic or evil, absolutely evil. I don't even like soft play it. Evil thoughts. That doesn't mean I think they should get bombed to death. And also, if we look at the materialistic perspective of it, bombing a people's doesn't really give them a lot of time to think like maybe trans people aren't the enemy, or like maybe gay people or whatever. They get radicalized because every day they worry about getting bombed. Okay. Now let's bring it back to the United States. In the United States, you don't have entire swaths of our population being bombed. That's one of the reasons why the United States has been so successful in their colonialist project, is because we are by ourselves. We have Canada, which has like less population than like 4 of our states, if not more than that, above us, and all of them live on the United States border, and they heavily rely on American economy. Then we have Mexico below us, and that's kind of it. So you can't have a land invasion. We can send people everywhere else. So there's nobody in our United States continental that's just getting bombed. There are still people who fucking hate trans people and fucking hate gay people in the United States and would kill them and do kill them. I mean, there's the nightclub shooting in 2018, the Pulse nightclub shooting, 2019. And it's the same result, slightly different way to get there. People, when they vote for Donald Trump, I think it's very common for Democrats, liberal voters to have this idea that when you're voting for Donald Trump, it's because every single person is saying, yes, I love that he's a sexist. I love that he's a rapist. I love that he's a pedophile. I love that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I love that he is a narcissist. All these horrible things that we all know to be true about Donald Trump. But if you look at any polling, any data, or if you talk to somebody who like is a Trump voter but like doesn't really care, those things aren't echoed. They're just, I don't know. Kamala Harris was vice president for the last 4 years, and my life kind of sucks. And before that, Donald Trump was president, and life was better. And part of that is because maybe they're misremembering a lot of the Trump presidency. And obviously, a lot of this is to blame on white men, because the most Republican voting base is white men, and white men are least affected by Trump's presidency. But they're voting based off their material positions. And so it's not people saying, I actually really enjoy Trump for being a rapist. And I think a lot of liberal tendency is to say, like, everybody who votes for Donald Trump is a rapist. but then literally be like, but we should have Republicans on our fucking in our cabinet. Actually, that's what we should do. I don't like his personality, but I think he's gonna do a better job. Exactly. And if you remember, during the Trump presidency, there were plenty of Democrats who just said if he just stopped tweeting, nobody would care as much. And again, that comes from a place of privilege of people whose rights weren't being taken away, or if they were, they weren't aware of it. But all this is to say, I don't think we, as people on the left, people who want a better future, can look at something like this, and you'll see this echoed everywhere. Is you will just see Democrats and Democratic voters that will just straight up say, like, what are we supposed to do? 30% of our country just voted for an evil person. Well, they're evil. We have 30% of our country is just straight up evil. When Kamala Harris, 30% of our country also just voted for Kamala Harris, who was being endorsed by Bill Clinton, who, I don't know if you know this, is a fucking rapist himself, was also, the Clintons were also friends with Epstein. Kamala Harris was actively saying she's going to continue the genocide that Joseph Robinette Biden was doing. So when you try to say, like, oh, 30% of our country is evil, but my evil guys are good, it doesn't make any sense. It's not productive. So the important thing to do is not to look at this and be like, oh, our country's rotten to the core, fucking Charlie XCX style. It's to look at it and say, what can we do to get better? And this is where polling is really, really important, because if we look at things like polling on, and I've brought them up a million times, like support for $15 minimum wage. Like, this was from April of 2021. So I can't say what it is now, but back in 2021, 62% of adults, the majority of Americans, yeah, we should go up to $15 an hour. 40% strongly back it. Okay. American support for abortion access. Okay. Again, I shared this in the Discord earlier. Historically, abortion since 1995 here, you can see it's never dipped below like 50%. This is not an unpopular thing. But the Democrats don't campaign on popular things, is my point. They point at conservatives and just be like, well, those are evil people. And we're going to do the same thing, but not evilly, I guess. It's the same with voters who didn't vote. I had people telling me yesterday, I don't want to vote. Trump is lying. Kamala's lying. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the same idea of like, ultimately it does come from I say it comes from a place of privilege, because voting is genuinely one of the easiest things to do in America to make your voice heard. And it's still hard. Like, it's still hard because of all the voter restrictions and everything. We could literally all rally together behind workers' rights and against corporations, billionaires. We could. And this is part of the problem with the United States as an entity now, is we as a collective have no class consciousness. We have zero class consciousness. The billionaires, tons of class consciousness. All of the politicians, save maybe a handful, and when I say a handful, I mean it's legit, like Rashida Tlaib, and like part of that group, and like I don't know how many more people you could really say like don't have like straight up class consciousness and just are in the government to make money. That's true. If you are engaged in your community, that does way more. When I say it was the easiest, I mean like voting is the easiest thing you can do, and it's still kind of hard. Being active every day is a lot harder, for understandable reason. Yeah, AOC. Yeah. That's what I mean by the squad. Rashida Tlaib, AOC. There are a very small handful of people I think you can point to, and you can say like, and obviously they can be wrong, and they are wrong sometimes. Ilhan Omar is another great politician. But when I lost my train of thought again. Is it fair to say the Democratic Party's failure is entirely their own? I feel like there's no adequate leftist Yes. Yeah. And I think the ultimate framing is I don't think it's a Democratic Party failure. I don't. I think this was their plan. Like, I don't know how you can look at this and see anything other than it was their plan. I don't know if you just got in here, boyfriend text, but like, if you go through and you watch this, I mean, how long have I been live? An hour and 20 minutes. Right? I as a dude, I'm just a dude. I'm a 30-year-old fucking podcaster. And I noticed these things. Granted, of course, I've been watching content creators, but like I can Google things. If you just Google CDC numbers on like certain things, or like the FBI numbers, or numbers that are given by police departments, crime is down. Like if you look up crime rates in 2024, or you know what the better one is how many people murdered by migrants 2024. Okay, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the election. Donald Trump is insistent that tens of thousands of people have been killed, murdered by illegal migrants, right? This is something that Donald Trump has been saying this entire time. Migrants are coming in and they're murdering our beautiful white women. In 2024, this is from the government's website, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They have no reason to lie about these numbers. If they do, they're going to make these numbers go up. Donald Trump has said migrants coming over and killing thousands of beautiful white women, right? And of course, there are people who have been murdered. But does somebody want to guess? Just people in chat, or if you're watching this as a VOD, I want you to, in your head, try to guess. Donald Trump says there's tens of thousands of people murdered. Try to guess how many thousands of women, or people, just people in general, have been murdered in 2024. It's November. By an undocumented, by a criminal non-citizen. I want you to guess how many thousands. I'll give you like a couple seconds here. Donald Trump says it's tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands, sometimes he says. 29 have been, 29 non-citizens have been convicted of murder in the, that's 2023. That's because I zoomed in too far. 2024 is still 29. 29! And now, I think you can understandably be like, okay, well, you know, maybe people were murdered and they didn't get caught. And like, sure, maybe you bump this up to number to like 50, 100. It's not tens of thousands. It's not hundreds of thousands. And that's what Donald Trump has been saying. So the question originally was, do you feel like this is the Democrats' like failure? How do the Democrats have access to Google? Democrats have access to Custom and Borders Protection's website. I'm not just some fucking like guy who's extremely connected and I figured out how to fucking Google something. This is their own data. How have the Democrats not a single time? Have you heard Kamala Harris say 29 people have been convicted of murder that were non-citizens this year? Never. They just completely capitulate to like, yeah, no, migrants are actually killing tens of thousands of people. It's genuinely mind-boggling, and I think this is why. Let me pull up the Malcolm X quote, and I do this a lot. Okay, I think Malcolm X has a really great quote. This is on Goodreads. And I probably won't read the whole thing, but this is Malcolm X. The white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the black man. Let me first explain what I mean by this white liberal. In America, there's no such thing as Democrats and Republicans anymore. That's antiquated. And this was back in, what, the 60s? There's no such thing as Democrats and Republicans anymore. That's antiquated. In America, you have liberals and conservatives. This is what the American political structure boils down to among whites. The only people who are still living in the past and thinks in terms of I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican is the American black person. I'm not going to say the N-word, obviously. He's the one who runs about bragging about party affiliation, and he's the one who sticks to the Democrat or sticks to the Republican. But white people in America are divided into two groups, liberals and Republicans, or rather liberals and conservatives. And when you find white people vote in the political picture, they're not divided in terms of Democrats and Republicans. They're divided consistently as conservatives and as a liberal. So even back then, he's like Malcolm X correctly identified the system that we are still currently under. And when you come in and you try to say like, I closed the tweet. or it was in my Paint app. Hang on. When the liberals try to say like, well, everybody who voted Trump just wants authoritarianism and fascism, and they're racist. The Democrats also want these things, because if they didn't, they would be actively campaigning against them, and they aren't. They're saying Trump is the bad guy. This one guy, he's the reason why everything sucks. If you notice, they do this every time. They do it with Israel as well. It's Bibi Netanyahu is such a bad guy. If only Bibi Netanyahu wasn't there. I'm sure this thing that's been happening since the 1900s, the early 1900s, this little thing called fucking Zionism, where they're trying to push out an entire group of people from their land. It's just because this guy that got installed in like the mid 2000s, I think, or was it the 2010s? He's the issue. And they do it with Trump. The neoliberal project in America has been put into motion for decades, if not centuries, since its inception. And it's like we're in 2024 and we're just like, oh man, Trump really ruined America, huh? He sucks. Trump is a piece of shit. He deserves to die a slow and painful death. He deserves no mercy. But to posture that the Democratic Party is any better by allowing Trump to happen, and to say, I don't know how you can watch everything I've talked about and get any other message. The Democratic Party has allowed this to happen. And the one thing, think about everything about this election cycle. There's pretty much like two main things that were on the ticket. Well, three. It's abortion access. We'll give that one to Kamala. People supported it. Broadly, they believed Kamala was going to do pro-abortion stuff. The economy, which people just inherently trusted Trump better. I think part of that is because of sexism and Trump as a man and a businessman. Also, people forgot how bad 2020 was and Trump's first presidency, and we're coming off the heels of the Biden-Harris administration, and the economy right now is dog shit. And the other one is immigration. Okay, so right now we're 1-to-1 in issues. We have abortion for Kamala Harris, and this is very reductive. And we have the economy for Donald Trump. There are still things Kamala Harris and their campaign could have done that could have helped with the economy. But the other one was immigration. And the Republican Party would not shut the fuck up about migrants coming over and murdering Americans. And this statistic was never given. 29 people. And it's 29 more people than should have died. I'm not advocating for any death. But if I was running against somebody and they were like just straight up lying, you know what I would do? I'd be like, that's a lie. Like, what are you talking about? If I was in a room with 100 green balls and the person opposite of me was like, there's 100 red balls, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? There are 100 green balls in here. It's insane. So to posture as like the Democratic Party is the moral one is so insane. And like, again, I don't want to get into like which one is worse. I think this quote by Malcolm X explains a lot of people's frustrations on the left with the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party has become the Republican Party. The Democratic Party just straight up is a Republican Party, but they slap a gay pride sticker on it. And even with that, I hate to let me pull up. I think even with that, let me just pull up the Kamala Harris issues page again. Someday I'll remember to stop fucking closing this because I know I'm going to come back to it. I want you to think back. Okay. 2016. Maybe some of you weren't of voting age back then. I was. It was the first presidential election I voted in. I didn't vote in 2012. I had just turned 18 in 2012. Maybe I did. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I didn't vote in 2012. I actually was an election judge in 2012. So I did vote. Never mind. I was an election judge in 2012. No, I was 17 when I did election judging because I was still in high school. I don't know. Regardless, I was an election judge in high school my senior year. Think back to 2016, though. Gay marriage had just been legalized nationally in 2015, a year before. Donald Trump starts running for presidency, and one of the big issues that became like a national talked about thing was trans people and their existence. And ultimately, it was the bathroom bill. It was I believe it was South Carolina. I can't remember if it was South Carolina or if it was North Carolina. It might have been North Carolina. but it was this bathroom bill. And it was this bill that they tried to pass that was like, you need to go, they was trying to control which bathroom people went to. And it did terribly, to the point to where Donald Trump in 2016, let me see if I can pull the video real quick. Donald Trump was arguably more pro-trans than Hillary Clinton. And that might sound insane. I don't believe him. Let me be clear. I do not believe him. But back in 2016, this is him on Inside Edition in talking outside of Trump Tower, I believe.
If Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
This is Matt Lauer, who obviously piece of shit. This is trying to get a gotcha on him because they're trying to posture the Democratic Party as like, well, we're the one that's pro-LGBTQ rights. So they're trying to hit him with a gotcha of like, you're telling me a trans woman comes into your bathroom and you're going to let her use your bathroom?
That is correct.
Appearing at a live town hall meeting on the Today Show, Trump also said he admires Harriet Tubman.
Okay, this is a dog shit video. But he goes on to say, I don't care what bathroom Caitlyn Jenner uses as long as she's peeing in a Trump Tower toilet or something along those regards. Now, fast forward to 2020. Anti-trans rhetoric has gone back to the cooker, and they said, okay, bathroom bills not working. People didn't like the bathroom bills thing. Joe Biden, if anybody can remember, I don't think Joe Biden ran on an inherently like pro-LGBTQ. I'm sure he did, but like I can't think of anything that he promised to codify or like make, protected peoples. I can't fully remember. And the Republicans had kind of dropped trans issues because they got shellacked so hard by the bathroom bill shit. But they went back to the fucking incubator and they lost in 2020. And as Boyfriend Text says, sports equality came up as a huge trans issue of, quote unquote, men, trans women playing with other women in high schools, in sports, yada, yada, yada. And this polls and performs a lot better as anti-trans, transphobic rhetoric. This is something that's been in the news for the last 4 years, all the way from, I always forget, is it Katie Ledecky? All the way from Katie Ledecky winning. I can't remember if she won, but the person who is famous for losing to Katie Ledecky got like 5th place. So like it's so stupid. It's just straight up transphobic bullshit. Is this wrong? No, she's the Olympic swimmer. I can't remember the person who lost. But the person who lost to the trans swimmer, the person who lost and became a celebrity. I mixed up my famous female swimmers. The person who lost to the trans swimmer got like 5th place. So she got beat out by like 3 other cis women. So it's just straight up transphobia. There's the amount of trans women or trans girls in sports and high schools across the nation is like, it's like 40 total. It's not an issue, but it polls really well. We saw it again in the Olympics, right? The 2024 Olympics, boxer. I mean, well, I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name either. But they made this whole fucking trans panic narrative of this woman who was born a woman was cheating in the Olympics, even though she was born a woman. And even if she was a trans woman, guess what? I still think she should be able to compete. Now, this has been happening for 4 years. The Republicans Party has adopted transphobia as part of their platform. Can you think of a single thing that the Harris administration has done to combat all of this transphobia? Can you think of a single like policy or even just like, can you think of a single time the Harris campaign has ever said we will outright says we will protect trans people? I'm trying to pull up an old an old tweet that I had here. Because I can't, and I pay attention to a lot of this stuff. I've listened to a lot of her stump speeches and her speeches. My search function. Come on, Twitter. Be good for half a second, please. My point is just I had a tweet a long time ago. Not a long time ago, a couple weeks ago, because it's like I think you'd be hard pressed to find a tweet or any statement from the Kamala Harris campaign this cycle of them saying straight up like we support trans people. The only time she talks about trans anything is about transnational gangs and how she prosecuted them. I don't know why it's not LGBT. I don't know why the Twitter search isn't working. But if you go to her page, the closest thing that she has here is under the protect, where'd it go? Protect civil rights and freedoms. They will fight to ensure that Americans have the opportunity to participate in our democracy by passing the John Lewis Voting Acts, Voting Rights and Freedom to Vote Act, which is good. We want access to safe and fair elections and more access to voting. Your administration will also continue to protect Americans from discrimination, building on her work to secure $2 billion in funding for offices of civil rights across the government. And as president, she will always defend the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. This right here is what they keep saying, right? Is to love who you love openly and with pride, which is a good statement, obviously. In 2004, she officiated some of the nation's first same-sex marriages, and as Attorney General, she refused to defend California's anti-marriage equality statewide referendum. As president, she'll fight to pass the Equality Act to enshrine anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQI plus Americans in healthcare, housing, education, and more into law. So the closest thing we get is her saying like, oh yeah, we're going to enshrine some protections and we're going to do some, they lumped LGBTQ rights in with voting rights. And they're saying, oh yeah, we'll give some money to help protect them. But where is the rhetoric that like is just like disproving this anti-trans narrative of trans people in sports like dominating other athletes? It's just baffling to me. It goes back to the same thing with this of like this trans narrative of how trans women are going in and like a guy is going to dress up as a woman and come in and beat your 11-year-old girl in contact football and he's going to kill her. Is just completely made up. It's completely transphobic and it's harmful. And the Democrats don't message against it. They just let it happen to the point to where their only thing is like, yeah, we'll pass some anti-discrimination bills, which if you look at the polling, Americans broadly, there's a poll that was like, there's a poll that's like the vast majority of Americans believe that trans people are over targeted. I'm not gonna be able to find the poll. And obviously America is a very transphobic country, and that is an inherently contradictory thing to believe when we have so much transphobia, and also people are like, well, they kind of get picked on too much. But that's, where is that messaging from the Democrats? The Democrats don't message against it. They all too often just tack with it. I don't know. I got to start wrapping up here pretty soon. So we can talk in the comments for maybe like 10 minutes and then I got to go. But I don't know. I hope this was entertaining, insightful in any way. If you disagree with me, that's fine. I've been frustrated with the Democratic Party for the last 8 years. And a lot of it is because we've allowed Donald Trump to become president twice. It's why there's so much frustration. And again, I understand there's obviously a lot of emotions running right now, and it's understandable. If you look at the voting by demographics, Black women voted like 87% for women, for Kamala Harris. And they're the ones who stand the most to be targeted, because they're one of the most I'm losing my words now. I'm running out of steam. They're one of the most oppressed groups in the United States as Black women. And it's fucking disheartening, and it's sad, and it's disgusting. But I think pointing at, and I didn't even get into any of this. I think everybody in chat, even if you had disagreements with me, I thank you. And I understand your disagreements. And I wanted this to be a place to where I don't want the finger pointing to be towards left, like the leftists or the people who didn't feel motivated to vote. The finger pointing ultimately should be at the Democratic Party for not mobilizing people to vote. That's why they lost 13 million votes, is they couldn't get people to get and vote, do early voting and go in the day. And that's what's frustrating. Hope we can help motivate each other to find daily ways to make the changes you want to see. If you have an idea for an organization, most likely a Black woman is already doing it, so just find that and help. Very true. Yeah. The most important thing is to help, build your local communities and protect and look out for each other. And that never stops. Even if Harris won, that would have never stopped either. It still should be your number one priority, which is to build groups. What did you guys stress eat last night? What did I stress eat last night? I know I stress ate something. Aurora made, she heated up some leftovers, and I was going to eat that. And then I said, oh, wait, no, I have this other thing. What the fuck did I eat? I can't remember now. Homemade Crunchwrap, that goes very hard. Trader Joe's PB cups. God, what the fuck did I eat last night? I had Taco Bell yesterday afternoon, I think. Or is that, I don't know. Even back in the afternoon, I was like, I don't feel good about this. Sandwich with Skin Coast. The stress did completely erase my memory. Somebody asked earlier, I think his boyfriend, Roe v. Wade was overturned under Biden. Could he have realistically done anything to counteract this? Yes. To the Taco Bell employees, so remember you, I go to a different Taco Bell, but they have started to recognize me, yes. Web phishing is very fun. With the Roe v. Wade stuff, I'm surprised how much the electorate gave, kind of forgot that, or forgave Biden. Like, Roe v. Wade was overturned under Biden's presidency. Part of the reason why the Supreme Court is packed conservative right now is because of Democratic mismanaging of Supreme Court justices. So they had someone die or retire under Obama's second term, and there was still 2 years left in his term, but they were like, at the time, Mitch McConnell was like, well, you can't appoint somebody. You're almost on your way out. You got to get. And the Democrats, being like rule followers, were just like, okay, we'll just win in 2016. And then they didn't. So then Trump got to appoint somebody there. And then, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there were people calling for her to retire under Obama's term. That way they could replace her with a liberal judge. And she didn't. And then she died during the Trump years. And then, of course, was replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. So already it was kind of the fault of Democrats in that regard. But also, the Democrats have been running on codifying Roe v. Wade for many years. It was never a top of the ticket thing until the Supreme Court went so conservative. But when Joseph Robinette Brandon was elected in 2020, and it seems so long ago, even though it was only 4 years ago. In the year 2020, year of our Lord, 2020, Joseph Robinette Brandon was the president. The House was a Democratic majority, and the Senate was a 50-50 Democrat-Republican Senate, with Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, which means a soft majority in the Senate. And if you remember, 2020, two of the biggest races in the election, obviously, is Joe Biden, but Raphael Warnock Warnock and Jonathan Ossoff, right? They were both senators from Georgia. And we needed those two to get to a 50-50. And the voters in Georgia went the fuck off. They went all in and they got both of them in to the Senate. I'm pretty sure they're both from the Senate. Maybe Ossoff wasn't from Georgia. I might be misremembering where Jonathan Ossoff is from. No, he's from Georgia. Yeah. And it was Raphael Warnock from Georgia. Yeah, they're both from Georgia. So the electorate said, we got you, Democrats. We don't want Donald Trump to do shit, and we want to codify Roe v. Wade. So people went out and they organized and they got these two senators to win Georgia. And of course, in 2020, Georgia also went blue. That's why Donald Trump was indicted, because he tried to illegally find, those 18,000 votes, however many votes. And the big thing was, can we codify Roe v. Wade? Because we know the Republicans have been trying to get rid of abortion access. And it didn't happen. And you might be saying, why didn't it happen? They had the presidency. Remember, again, I closed it again. Remember Kamala Harris's website. Remember, on the abortion issue. When Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, Kamala Harris will sign it. Why was that bill never passed through Congress? We had a majority in the House. The House passed it, I'm pretty sure. But when anything came to the Senate, when it was a 50-50 Senate, I'm going to say two names and it might give you PTSD. Okay? A little guy by the name of Joe Manchin. Okay, he's a senator. He's a Democrat, D next to his name, from West Virginia. There's another person who we cannot forget, and I am forgetting her name right now. Now I have remembered it. First-time Senator Kyrsten Sinema. And now, Shijo, you say Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are the devil, and yeah, these were the people who would routinely... Kyrsten Sinema voted down $15 minimum wage, a proposition for that in the Senate. She was the last vote. She's like, yeah, Kyrsten Sinema jump scare. And a lot of rage from Democratic voters went to these two people. And it became like, oh, we can't pass anything in the Senate because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Since 2022. Actually, they had a majority. I'm sorry. Currently, there's a 50-50 Senate split. The Democrats had an outright majority. I think it was 51-49 in 2020. I think I was mistaken. But since 2022, have you heard of either of these fucking senators' names? Once. A single fucking time. No. Why? Because, now the House is Republican. So, I'm sorry. And this is me completely, this is the alarm bells going off. This is me giving an opinion or, this isn't fact by any means. But, and I hope again, that in this last 2 hours that I've been fucking screaming, we cannot look at Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and be like, if only they weren't there, then we definitely would have passed these bills. When in the past 2 years, where the fuck have they been? They haven't been the bad guys for 2 years because we don't need a bad guy anymore. The Democratic Party can just go to Joe Manchin and say, hey, can you be the scapegoat? Can you be the guy who votes this one down? And then next time we'll have Kyrsten Sinema do it. And then that way you guys get all the heat. And they're only up for vote every 6 years. And so when they're up for vote, and when Kyrsten Sinema would be up for vote in 2026, is she still in office? I genuinely don't know. She assumed office in 2019. But when they're up for revote, it's, we can't lose a Democratic. Did he just lose his seat to a Republican? Great. That's the issue. This is the issue, right? You can't, Nancy Pelosi is a really good example of this. Or you know what? I'll even do it from the right. Marjorie Taylor Greene, jump scare warning. Marjorie Taylor Greene, extremely unlikable person. And we'll do it over here too. We'll do it with I'm blanking on the guy's name. My brain is he's in the House. Who's the fucking pedophile in the Florida Senate? Matt Gaetz. Thank you, Google. Okay, let's look at these two people. Okay, Matt Gaetz jump scare. Which one? Thank you. Yeah, they're all pedophiles. These are two extremely insane people. Okay, but now let's look at it from this regard. Let's say you're a Republican in Matt Gaetz's district, or you're a Republican in Georgia under Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, and you want a different Republican in because Marjorie Taylor Greene believes that the Jews control space lasers, which started fires in Hawaii. Something that she actually said, and was forced to go to a Holocaust museum and write a fucking 5-paragraph essay like she was an 8th grader about how she believes, about how she was sorry and anti-Semitism is real. Let's say you don't want them in office. What the fuck are you going to do? They aren't going to get primaried out. And you don't want a Democrat in. Democrats want to eat your babies. Like, what? So, like, can you, this is what I mean before. I sort of got into this earlier. You can't really blame conservative, like, what other options do conservative voters, I mean, I disagree with everything conservative voters stand for, but what other option do they have? They believe that Democrats are like vampires and want to eat your baby. Like, yes, they made her write an essay, yeah. So when it comes to the, and I'll say the same thing with like, and again, we'll say Nancy Pelosi or we'll go back to Joe Manchin. These are people who, Nancy Pelosi has been in office fucking longer than I've been alive, I'm pretty sure. She was a rep from 2013. Okay, maybe I was overestimating how long she's been in office. 2011, and then 29. Oh, that was the Speaker of the House. I don't know. She's old. She's been in office, I'm pretty sure, since Biden's been in office. Very, very long time. But let's say you're a Democrat living in Nancy Pelosi's district in California, and you don't like her because she uses her position in the House as a means to generate wealth for herself. And that's just like a fact. She just somehow Nancy Pelosi has like a 30% fucking return on stocks, which is awesome. Well, her husband does, Paul Pelosi. And you don't want, and you're a Democrat living in California and you don't like Nancy Pelosi. What are you going to do? She's not going to get primaried out. The Democrats aren't going to fund a race against Nancy Pelosi. And, oh, you want a Republican there instead? It's the same thing with Joe Manchin. He has a D next to his name. So you can't get him out because then an R is going to go in there, a Republican. And then you're fucked. It's a Republican. And so Democrats do this song and dance where, like, to bring it back to Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin when it comes to Roe v. Wade, everything that like Biden ran on in 2020, you notice how everything that he ran on that was really popular, like student loan relief, codifying Roe v. Wade, minimum wage increase, better healthcare. You notice how all of those things started to happen, and then miraculously some random fucking court was like, no, that's actually no. We're going to hold this up for 4 years. Why does that never happen the other way? So genuinely think, when a Republican candidacy happens or a presidency happens, and they pass some insane thing, and granted, normally Republicans are stripping away things rather than adding in legislation. But when's the last time you heard about a Republican policy being held up in court? The Democrats just allow shit to happen, and then when they're in office, when they try to do anything, they just like put up their hands like, well, we can't do that. That's a great point. All of this is to say, I've been focusing short-term domestically in this entire rant, and I do have to go here soon, so I'll end on this. All of this I've been focusing on. I've primarily left Palestine out of the conversation because it's domestic affairs, and people in America don't care about domestic affairs. They just want to grill burgers in America. It's mainly been about domestic affairs in terms of the economy, abortion access, and migration. And as Give It Up for Girls says, we did not a single time in this stream, and really in a lot of the campaigning in this presidential election, nobody talked about climate change. This thing that's going to kill us all. Like, and it's not like climate change is just like, oh, the world's going to get hot, the oceans are going to rise, and then that's it. When that happens in the next 20, 30 years, or as it's continually happening, it's not like a day is going to click and then it happens. There's going to be a mass migration of people away from coastal areas into more inland areas, including a mass migration to the United States of America. And I think this is where you can maybe start to speculate. Why are the conservatives and the Democrats pushing for such an anti-immigrant process right now? I think you could be cynical, and I think part of it is true, and that they're just straight up racist. It's definitely true. I definitely believe a lot of people in power just straight up white supremacists, straight up racist. But they also, again, we have the same access to information as they do for a lot of these things. We all know that climate change is coming. They can also look and see, oh, when climate change happens, we're gonna have a lot of migration. We need a reason, a legal and moral reason, to not allow these people to come into our country, because we're gonna build a wall. We're gonna deport everybody who is here illegally. We're gonna make examples of them. We're gonna separate their families at the wall and put their kids in cages. We're gonna force sterilize them. And now this is all speculation on my end. But straight up, why the fuck else would they be doing it? It's white supremacy. But also, they can look to the future. And you know what a billionaire loves doing? Making more money. And so all of these corporate donors, all of these billionaires that effectively run the United States, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, all the social media giants, all these major corporations, the Koch brothers, they want to protect their money. And you know what's not good for money? A migration crisis where the government is forced to use taxpayer money, which of course taxes also come through corporations, to build more housing, to house migrants, and to feed these migrants, and to create infrastructure for these migrants. Well, and why would we all want abortions to be illegal? Maybe because we need to siphon the most money we can from the workforce until the rich go to their bunkers, and we won't have the migrant workers because they're in cages. Yeah, I think if you want to be really cynical and really speculative as well, if you look at abortion, I do believe that the reason why the Republican Party is so anti-abortion is because think about it for a second. And this is speculation, almost conspiracy theory level stuff. But if Donald Trump's granddaughter has an unwanted pregnancy, I'm not even saying like in the worst scenario, just like she is, or even if Barron gets somebody pregnant, and even if it's consensual, yada, yada, yada. Do you think Donald Trump, who lives in Florida, where abortion is not allowed, is just gonna be like, well, we have to give birth to that baby? No, they're gonna get an abortion. They're straight up. They have the money to. They have the money. They have the ability to do it. Rich people will always have the money. But you know who don't have the money to travel state lines or to do things, to get abortions like that, to get safe access to abortions? It's poor people. And when poor people have more kids, you're creating a workforce. Straight up. You're creating a workforce of poor people who cannot physically break the cycle of poverty because kids are expensive. Straight up. And now this is speculation. This is leaning into conspiracy theory. But I don't fully believe cynically. I think there's two things that you have to do when you think about the Republican. When I say Republican or anybody saying Republican, you have the electorate, you have the people who are voting. And I think the people who are voting straight up that are pro-life and big quotation marks, who are anti-abortion, straight up are doing it for their own quote unquote moral reasons of like, I don't think a baby should be killed. And they're wrong. Baby should be killed. Absolutely. That was /J. I'm obviously supporting abortion, but I do think the voters straight up are like, no, abortion is killing a baby. I don't think the conservatives who run the party believe that. So I think when you get to that step, it's like, well, why do they care? Why the fuck does JD Vance care if women are baby incubators. And part of it is sexism, for sure, 100%. Part of them, they just want women to be baby incubators. But why would the whole party do that? And I think that's when you add in that like conspiracy, like on top of the misogyny, on top of all of that stuff, to uphold the patriarchy, you need a working class that is subservient. To uphold capitalism, you need a working class. Billionaires can't make money if there are no people to make money off of. I'm celibate because I'm anti-billionaire. Okay. It's not even conspiracy. It's just straight up the fascist capitalist death making machine. Yeah. I just, when I say it's, you can't like point to a person saying this or like facts. So it's speculation entirely, but it's speculation based in, I don't know, material conditions. And yeah, they complain about declining birth rates. And one of those things is they'll point to them like, well, it's because when nations have declining birth rates, nations start to like decline. Like if you look at any, a major country or empires, they start, once you have a birth rate below replacement rate, once people are having less than on average 2 kids per couple, shit goes down. And so they talk about that openly because they want to protect their corporate interests. It's not like on the same hand, they will complain that the world has too many people in it and therefore we cannot feed everybody and we cannot house everybody. And then on the other hand, they'll be like, but we're not having enough babies, are we? And again, part of it is definitely white supremacy. And I'll end on this point and then I really do have to go. Again, just to that point, in the United States, there are, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2023, there are 653,000 people experiencing homelessness in the United States. Okay. This is from 2022. 15 million houses, approximately 10% of the country's housing inventory, were vacant in 2022. 653,000 people experiencing homelessness. 15 million homes. And I don't know about you, but there's not a lot of, you could fit more than one person in a house. 2 people live in this house. The homelessness crisis is not one that is just because we don't have enough houses. And that's something that Kamala Harris ran on. It's, we need to undo regulation. We need to build more houses. And it's like, yeah, we should build more houses. We should build more affordable income housing and have it subsidized by the government and allow people to live there. But to imply that like that would fix everything is just wild. It's just going to be corporations making more money off of people. But yeah. Anywho, I do have to go. Maybe while I was ranting, Pennsylvania flipped. Oh my God. Did Pennsylvania flip? Oh no. Okay. So, thanks for hanging out. If you have any questions, concerns, or you think if I said something wrong, please don't be angry, or it's right to be angry. It's understandable to be angry. If you think I said something wrong, you just do what I'm saying. Just please be cordial. Leave a comment on, it's gonna be on Judgy's VOD on YouTube, JUDGIES VOD. And people are complaining about ads, but they were here the whole time. So if you leave a comment or email, if you want to reach out and say something, if you're going to spew some pro-Trump bullshit, I'm not going to respond to you, but let's talk about things. I'm sure I said something in here that like maybe slipped or I didn't fully mean, but, thanks, Link here. I'm glad you had a good time. Normally it's not this, yelly. Normally we're a lot more chill. But let's talk about it. I want, my ultimate goal is to redirect people's rightful and understandable anger and frustration to be directed to the right party and to the right people, I should say. Because I said this in the Discord and the Judgy's Discord, the number one people you should be mad about for the next 4 years are straight up conservatives. Straight up. The Republican, and not conservative voters, the Republican Party, who are actively working to fuck over everything in America. The number 2 people you should be pissed off with are the Democratic Party. 100%. Not Democratic voters, not leftists who didn't vote, or leftists who did vote, but not for the person you wanted them to, or just people who were in the middle and didn't vote or whatever. It's not the voters, it's the parties. It's the Democratic Party, and more importantly, it is the Republican Party. Those are the people who I want you to direct your anger to, and use that anger to organize and to unionize your workplace. Seek out, like, I think the Judges has a great community with like-minded people who want to see other people succeed. But go out in your local communities, you know, help volunteer, even if it's not necessarily a leftist thing. Go volunteer at a dog shelter, or like help pick up garbage if you can, or like do phone banking. Yeah, call your government. Just fucking call and annoy them. That's something a lot of people can do. You know, send an email if you can't call, or, you know,